All right, we're back and welcome to the show, Joel Smyth. Joel, what's going on, buddy?
How you doing? How you doing? Happy to be here.
Yes, that's right. It's time for this week's edition of Buzz is Building with Joel. Every Wednesday, he joins us for the last block of the show to provide 5 players with buzz that you need to keep an eye on heading into every single week. Today, we've got Week 9 edition. Week 9, man, time is flying here. And we're going to continue the Thursday Night Football theme going here with your first Buzz is Building kind of duo with this one.
It's going to be the Ravens for right now. The big news, Lamar Jackson coming back, full participant. So we are getting him back. And the efficiency comes back with him. Derrick Henry, this isn't a new thing. It's always been this way with Lamar, no matter who the running back is, looking back to last year. But this year so far, his yards before contact, that's the big one. His yards per carry in general, skyrocket when Lamar's in the lineup. The main reason that wasn't really good with Lamar was because of the volume being so low. So you see these last games where Lamar hasn't been out there, it's shot up from 12 attempts per game to 20 carries per game. That's the best in the NFL. It's 27th to first in the NFL. And there is a little bit of worry there in terms of that play calling. They're going pass heavy. But I honestly think this is more on the defense than it is actually on Lamar Jackson. We look at those first 5 weeks, they were averaging 35 points per game against them. That Ravens defense, by far the worst in the NFL. Worse than the Bengals are right now, worse than the Dolphins, whoever it is. They were 32nd. And then after the bye, there's these last 2 games at least, 16 points per game. So they've had back-to-back good games on defense, 6 best in the NFL. They're not going to be a top 6 defense. But again, I don't think they're going to be 32nd going forward. I think that helps them out a lot.
I love this point. It's kind of, again, a continuation of what we were just talking about with Nate for the Thursday night preview, where my point was that I think the splits and sort of the stats for this Baltimore defense might look a little deceiving right now because they're getting a lot healthier. In addition to the fact that they did what they did with Kyle Hamilton last week, brought him into the box to kind of defend that Bears run game. I don't know if they're going to do that this week with just the way Miami runs the ball. I don't know if that makes as much sense. They might kick him actually back as the deep safety to protect against Jalen Waddle, who's been cooking this year. But nevertheless, I like where this defense is heading, which is important for our guy Derrick Henry here, Joel, because he's a great player, first ballot Hall of Famer, no question about it. But he's still one of these backs that is game script sensitive. So if the defense can keep things close, that really is a big part of the equation for Derrick Henry.
Totally. Very offense dependent, how this offense is going is how he's going to go. Last year, they're winning a bunch of games and he was incredible. I think that'll start to turn around here. So I'm not overly worried about him in general. If we're looking at the age fall off, he hasn't fallen off at all. He's still been doing good. He still looks good, putting up good NFL numbers, even with Cooper Rush in there. So now that Lamar's back, I think that efficiency goes back up. We get a matchup this week. Miami is 32nd in those explosive carries allowed. Henry definitely brings that to the table, especially with Lamar Jackson back there taking some of that attention away. So I really like him for this Thursday too.
Well, good, because I've got some Derrick Henry teams, and we need him. We need to get off to a good start on Thursday night. Let's go to the next Buzz is Building. This is, again, more of a situation than a specific player.
Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard. So going back to there after a couple of weeks, just with Dave Canales kind of coming out and saying, hey, we like Hubbard, but maybe it's time to give Rico Dowdle a little bit more looks, which is a really tough matchup this week. So it's going to be hard, but we look at Hubbard and Dowdle, just their efficiency. Some of these stats I don't love using always to look at efficiency, like yards per carry, but in this situation, it's the same team. So that's the big thing for me is they know this. If we know this, they know this. It's the same team, so we can look at all this, and it's 1-for-1, same offensive line, same offense. And Dowdle's numbers are incredible, and Hubbard's are pretty bad. Last in the NFL in explosive carries, last in missed tackles forced, second to last in yards after contact. This wasn't the case last year. It was a good offensive line last year. It's a good offensive line this year. So I don't know if it's maybe the injury coming into play or what it is, but Dowdle's been looking amazing. If he can get to 65 to 70% of those RB touches, of those RB carries, he can be that confident RB2 play.
Yeah, and I agree with you that generally I don't want to sit here and use yards per carry and some of this stuff to compare guys in different situations. And I really want to be, and I think Dave Canales has been trying to be fair to Chuba because he's a guy that you know how this works, Joel. In the NFL, they always say you can't lose your job due to injury. And I think that they've tried to have him come back and return to the lead back role, even if they have been kind of going series by series. But this is a team that needs to win football games. This is a head coach who benched the former number 1 overall pick at quarterback last year because he was not playing up to what they needed from him. And they played a former undrafted free agent in Jalen Coker last year when he was just one of the better guys in the room. Like, it's a meritocracy there in Carolina. And I think that some of the reports out of like Joe Person, who's covered the team forever, said that like Dave knows the kind of difficulties of benching a popular or moving away from a popular player. Like Chuba's not going to get benched. You're not going to get 0 touches here, but you can see it. I can see it. The stats show it. Like Rico has just been better right now. So I like where do you think you'll end up kind of having him from a rankings perspective this week?
This week, a little lower just because of that Green Bay defense. We've seen this Panthers offense the last couple of weeks hasn't been as good. And when you're looking at those committee running backs, that affects them more than anything else. So we're looking at this defense. They're the number 3 against the run right now. They've been run on the least in the NFL. Like everybody knows that Packers defense is going to be able to stop the run. The big thing that I like this week in terms of his potential is Hubbard was getting the targets, the routes when he's been active. Dowdle's been that goal line guy, but it's kind of been Hubbard's backfield in the passing game. This past week was kind of that first week where it was more 50-50. They each had 10 routes out of the backfield those first 3 quarters. Hubbard kind of played at the end of the game when it was 40-3 at that point. But when the game mattered, it was 50-50 in terms of those routes too. So maybe he can get some passing game work. A playable like flex running back, but not the greatest matchup. After that is when I get a little bit more confident.
Totally. Yeah. So even if like Rico Dowdle doesn't have this smash this week, he still might be somebody that you can get ahead of your league's like trade deadline, especially if it doesn't work this week and he goes out as the starter. People are going to start to panic even more. But I agree that I think the tide is turning towards his favor at this point. And yeah, man, again, it's time. It's time for Carolina to start winning some games. Rico is on a cheap deal, but he can easily be somebody they extend long-term, and they have both these backs. And I still like how they've handled it, but I think it's just time to switch the rotation here a little bit. Get Rico the first drive of the game, because that's another thing here too, Joel. This team has driven me nuts this year with how slow they start. They always find themselves like quickly in a 10-point hole. You know what might help not doing that is maybe getting off onto the right foot. I mean, I think Dave even said this, like, we want to put our best foot forward. Like, yeah, you need to put your best back out there first so that you don't fall behind like 10 points like you've done every single other week.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully Bryce Young can have that like second half resurgence after he comes back from this too. That's what I'm hoping for.
Oh, shoot, dude. It can't be any worse than Andy Dalton last week. I'll tell you that. All right, let's get to your next buzz is building situation here.
Yeah, we're going to be going to Tyrone Tracy, one that I'm scared to be confident in, but I am. Like, everything is pointing toward him being good in fantasy football. This is a guy, like, the start of the year, I was like hesitant on Scadaboo because it was like, I don't think Tracy's going to play himself out of this position. Like, he wasn't incredible last year, but he was good. Like, he was a good NFL player, and then obviously got hurt. But now that he's back healthy, these last 2 games, when Scadaboo was that number 1 guy, when he was off the field, whether there was injury or just him getting the breather, it was all Tyrone Tracy. So we look at last year, when Tyrone Tracy was a starter, 13 points per game, kind of that solid RB2. But the biggest downfall for him was the Giants were just getting blown out constantly. And when they got blown out, they would just throw the ball every single play. So when they did not lose by over 10 points, the Giants, he was getting 16 carries per game. When they lost by over 10 points, he was getting 8. So now that this defense is a little bit better, they have Jackson Dart, who's been better for the team in general. I do like it, just looking at the volume that he could have potentially in this offense.
Yeah, and I think, again, Dart being there, it can't be overstated, not just for the way he's made the team better, but also typically, Joel, we see these guys who scramble, they take off, they don't throw to their running back. Maybe it changes with a different running back. I don't want to just copy-paste what we saw with, Cam Scadaboo and Jackson Dart, because those guys are like basically brothers from another mother type situation, but like maybe that just was this Cam Scadaboo thing. But Tyrone Tracy, former receiver, and Jackson Dart was willing to check it down and like throw to the running back, so that would really help Tracy this year as opposed to what we saw last year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Tracy's like rubbing his head up against Dart this weekend in the press conference. But last year, like,
probably not. I'm gonna say probably not on that, but we'll see.
We will see. Yeah, like in college, this guy was a pass catcher. Like, he was a receiver. So I was looking at it and kind of came into this saying like, oh yeah. And then I looked at the numbers. I was like, oh, his receiving actually like hasn't been the greatest. So hopefully they use him more in that way because obviously he has that ability. But we're just looking at the volume for Scadaboo. These last 4 games, so kind of ever since Dart came in up until not counting the game that he was injured, his expected fantasy points per game was third best among running backs to CMC and Jonathan Taylor. And in this offense, he was paying it off. Obviously, he was amazing. So maybe it's not third best for Tracy, but like I don't think it's falling all the way down to 25th or something like that. If he can have like a near RB12 in terms of the volume, he can be a great fantasy asset going forward that's more trusted in this offense just because they're giving him all that valuable work.
Yeah, I think he was a great waiver pick because the reality is you're just not going to find guys that are going to walk into starting, like clear starting running back jobs off the waiver wire. So I was happy to get him where I got him. I actually had him stashed in a couple places, so I was happy about that as well. But matchups the next 2 weeks too. Niners, Bears, that's looking pretty good for Tyrone Tracy. So he's certainly got the runway here to start to make a difference. Let's go to your next situation here. And my God, I'm going to need you to help me out with this one because I have no idea what we're doing with the damn Vikings quarterback situation.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. JJ McCarthy. I have been shocked by the amount of people that are anti JJ McCarthy after like 1.5 games, 2 games through the year. And I get it. Like it wasn't the greatest, but I even saw a tweet today where it was like, oh, we look back at that Falcons game and talked about how bad he was. Everybody's been bad against the Falcons except for Tua somehow. But everybody before Tua was horrible against the Falcons. Like no one's even throwing 200 yards against them. So that was like the one game. And then besides that, it was the Bears in week 1, which, yeah, he wasn't the greatest, but then he had that fourth quarter, which he was incredible. And everyone was like, oh, maybe this is a thing now. JJ McCarthy's going to be great. So I would rather trust in Kevin O'Connell, who, in terms of fantasy points, 6th best since he's been hired, and those receiving fantasy points provided. And every single guy that goes in there produces. So JJ McCarthy through 2 games. I'm trying not to panic too much about those 2 games. And we're looking at the schedule the rest of the way. Those receivers, number 1. JJ McCarthy himself, number 1. So a lot depends on the volume, but the schedule goes in their favor too.
Lions, Ravens, Bears, Packers, Seahawks, Washington, Dallas, New York, Detroit. So like I do see the spots here for this Vikings passing game. I was about not laugh at you, but laugh at the idea of like, well, yeah, no kidding. People are concerned with what they saw. It was horrific to start the year, but you do make a good point about the Falcons. And this is the point where like, we know now a lot more than we did then. We know this Falcons defense can actually be really difficult to play against because, yeah, you're watching week 2 and you're like, JJ McCarthy can't even get it done against the damn Falcons. That defense hasn't been good since I was like in high school, which is a long time ago at this point. The defense hasn't been good since I was in high school. Oh, well, now we know it's actually been a pretty good unit. So that's a good point. I want to be open-minded to McCarthy, but I would be lying if I wasn't a little bit nervous. The fact they were willing to send, Carson Wentz with one shoulder out there, Joel, that's at least got to make you feel a little uncomfortable.
I know. Yeah, I think that is the big question going forward. Like the big, like what I'm going to be looking at this weekend isn't necessarily how many yards he has. How does JJ do? It is going to be how they use that passing attack in terms of the volume. Like we saw last week, they cannot run the ball. It hasn't been good in that way. In those first 2 games, McCarthy barely got to 20 passing attempts. Like when everyone was complaining about Jalen Hurts' passing volume, the only guy below him was JJ McCarthy through those first 2 games. So do they pass the ball? Do they trust him to go out there and sling it? Because these last 4 games, their pass rate over the expected positive every single time. Meaning in those neutral situations, they're going more pass first. So if that reverses course with JJ McCarthy coming in, that does worry me because Jefferson has 10 plus targets every single game this past month. So he wasn't bad with McCarthy to start the year. Wasn't great, but he wasn't bad. Had his 1 touchdown of the year in week 1. So hopefully better days going forward for him, especially in that positive touchdown regression. But that's the big thing I'm going to be looking forward to seeing is do they go out there and let JJ sling it?
All right, last one here. Let's do a little check-in on the Washington Commanders.
It's not as fun. Yeah. It's Jacory Croskey-Merritt. Very similar. It is not identical, but the most similar comparison is what we talked about at the beginning. Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. Jayden Daniels will help him in terms of that efficiency. But when we're looking at Jacory Croskey-Merritt, his volume isn't as good as maybe when you're looking at the carries per game. He has the 6th best percentage in terms of the backfield carries over this last month, which is amazing. Like best running backs in the NFL and kind of JCM right there. But with that same exact month, he's 38th in expected fantasy points. That is right behind Kenneth Walker, which I feel like is a good example of he's not really getting any receiving work at all. The goal line work hasn't really been there because the offense hasn't really been there. So the volume isn't very valuable. With Jayden Daniels coming back, that does help. So that was his big game against the Chargers was with Daniels. Then it was kind of shaky. Daniels went down in that third game. And then we saw last week with Mariota wasn't the greatest. So he does need Daniels. That helps. The matchup this week, not the greatest, but it is more of that boom bust going forward.
Yeah, I think more boom bust going forward. And when they're playing lighter competition, worse defenses, the game scripts can be closer. People will be able to see when those games, I think, are coming for JCM. And the best way to do that, guys, is to make sure you're following Joel on social media. He's helping you out with all these matchups. He's posting all these videos. So make sure you do that everywhere. TikTok. I know you got the Instagram, the Twitter, all the things. So make sure you follow Joel on social media for more players. And Buzz is building on all the things just like this